Coming down the aisle from northwest London, we bring you the Juggernauts of Wrestling, the Mac Daddy Lee McAndrew and luscious Lionel Manoff. Brought to you by JingTVOnline.com. Welcome to the Juggernauts of Wrestling. I am the Fresh Prince of South Oxy, the Mac Daddy Lee McAndrew, and with me is the hunk of Harrow, luscious Lionel Manoff. How you doing, Lionel?
Not bad. Not bad.
Yeah, so today we're discussing SummerSlam 1992, which was in front of 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium. And the reason that we're choosing that is we were there, weren't we, Lionel?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we didn't know each other at the time, obviously.
Yeah, we became friends much later, so we didn't know of each other's existence. But who knows? Maybe we were sitting near each other and didn't realise.
Yeah.
And Wembley Stadium is actually quite near where we both live, isn't it? At the time, I was a little bit further away, not too much further away, but a bit. But I think you've always been quite near Wembley, haven't you, Lionel?
No, actually, when I went there, I wasn't in Harrow. I was in Essex at the time.
Oh, were you? All right, yeah. That's probably still a bit nearer than me though, because I was just in North Buckinghamshire, so I think
Oh yeah.
you were marginally nearer. So yeah, neither of us were as near to it as we are now. But for us now, it's just like for me, it's a bus and a train ride away, and it's sort of it'd take me about half an hour, maybe an hour, and you
Yeah.
would probably be about half an hour, wouldn't it? So
Yeah, and also yeah, because it was nice seeing the old. I prefer the old Wembley Stadium than the way it is now. It's much better with the two
oh
towers. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I like the old design as well. Really, it is what it is, though. This show was considered a financial and critical success. It actually made 1.2 million pounds in merchandise, and that was even back then. So that'd be worth even more now.
Yeah, 30 years later, yeah.
I mean, it shows my age. I remember now that it was £25, and obviously, if you go to an event like that now, it'd be so much more than that. But in my head, I still think £25 is a reasonable amount for a wrestling event. So tell me, Lionel, who did you go with for SummerSlam?
I went with my mum and my brother and his friend.
And I
And
went with my dad and my two sisters. Yeah, my dad's no longer with us, so again, sort of you think of SummerSlam, I also think of him being there with me, which is a nice memory.
I can't remember I can't remember which way round it was, but one of us had the Hulk Hogan T-shirt, one of us had the Ultimate Warrior T-shirt,
Ah,
but and then you had the yellow hands, you know.
yeah, I was watching that wrestling bios thing on it, and the guy was saying they must have made a fortune out of all those foam hands because there were so many in the crowd. Although the ones I saw, I thought were green. So
Maybe it's the green ones they sold there. Maybe
yeah,
I don't know where. Maybe I got the yellow things from another site or something. Yeah.
I mean that is normally the traditional color, isn't it? Yellow, but I think these ones are green.
Yeah, but you don't see them anymore, do you?
No, I mean, I think they're a fad that's long gone now.
It's a shame because it's quite good.
I don't know. They've had their time. I don't really miss them.
Yeah, and yeah, as I said, it was obviously it was a nerve wracking experience for me because that was my first event. Yeah.
Yeah, and we should actually mention that I think you're in the same position. We paid top whack for the tickets, which was £25 back then, and we were expecting really good seats where like you'd be up close to the action, but we were sort of really high up, and you could the wrestlers were like matchsticks, weren't they?
Yeah, all you could hear was mainly the music and
Mm.
figures walking about.
Yeah, I mean, you could see they had the matches on the big screen, although it wasn't the same as actually seeing them properly in the ring. Just the atmosphere, it was still a really good experience, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, and I was talking about it with my mum today, saying having to hold my legs from the start to finish. I couldn't
Mm,
stop my legs from shaking because I was so nervous about it and
yeah.
excited.
What were you nervous about? You nervous about like
No,
the
no,
event or being high up? What was it?
oh no, not nervous in that way. Nervous, overexcited, like nervous.
Ah,
So looking forward to it. Yeah,
I
and also
see.
the first thing I remember, the main thing I remember is when we were outside. Obviously, they're doing rehearsals when we were outside, or rehearsing, or doing the sound rehearsals before
Mm.
everything starts. I remember hearing the Legion of Doom music coming on,
Ah, that's
and
cool.
I never forget that. So they must have been doing the last minute checkups on the music, entrance music and stuff. Yeah, and also I remember wanting to get a hot dog as well. Yeah, it's funny. You remember some stupid things.
Yeah, I've got a memory at the end. I'll show you. Nothing exciting, but just things I remember from that day. So one thing about this event was originally it's supposed to take place in Washington D.C. The wrestling business was on a downturn in the USA, and it was still doing very well over in Europe. I think they'd been on tours and they were doing big business. So the thought was, why not have it somewhere in Europe? And there were different places we looked at: France, Germany, but in the end they chose Wembley Stadium, which is arguably one of the biggest stadiums in the world, possibly the most famous stadium in the world, and that's what they
Yeah,
went with in the end. And
uh,
apparently, Wembley Stadium was cynical about whether it would be a commercial attraction, SummerSlam, but
obviously 80,000. Yeah,
yeah, in the end, they must have realised they made the right decision to go with it, mustn't they? With
and hopefully they have another event in Wembley Stadium again. Hopefully,
yeah, I mean, you and I are hoping for a WrestleMania there, aren't we?
yeah, maybe. Yeah, I know they're coming to Birmingham in April, but it's a bit too far. I've seen what the price is. The best ticket right at the front is like over £100,
How is it?
which I suppose is not too bad. Not too bad, but it depends. It depends on the angle, the shape of the stadium and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a brilliant experience. I was still, as I said, if I knew things then that I know now, and because I was as I said, I'm more interested in wrestling even more now
Mhm.
than then. I would have taken much more notice to,
You see, because I'm the opposite. I'm slightly less interested in the modern wrestling product. I still like it, but I think those are my golden days of being a wrestling fan. Um, One thing I was thinking, maybe one day in the future, you and I should pick our favorite year of wrestling. I've got an answer for that, and maybe I'll get your answer for that. But that's a topic for another time.
oh, that would be a hard one. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that
quite
would be,
easy for me. So, but we'll like I say, we'll ponder on that and maybe have that as a future topic.
yeah.
Okay, so there were three matches that weren't shown on the American broadcast and weren't on the WWE network. That's where we've just both rewatched it, isn't it, on the WWE network? And so there's three matches from that were actually happening at the event that weren't on that version we watched a minute ago. So the three matches that didn't make it onto the WWE network, I'll go through them in order. So the first match, and this was actually the very first match of the event, that was Jim Duggan and the Bushwhackers versus the Mountie and the Nasty Boys.
Oh yeah, yeah. I on that one, I've only saw who won it and who lost it. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah. So this match is obviously it's not going to be a sort of in-ring classic, but it's a good fun match. It's just the purpose of it is just to get the crowd going, and the crowd really do react to Jim Duggan and the Bushwhackers. They're really
that,
getting into it.
that was a perfect combination because you got you can't have a better combination and
Yeah.
yeah,
So a lot of the matches them just sort of posturing to the crowd, and the crowd are just responding very enthusiastically. So it was a good move to have that match on first. And it's a very chaotic match, which is what you'd expect from most of the participants in it. I mean, the Nasty Boys are quite chaotic as well. The match ends where the Bushwhackers hit the Mountie with a battering ram. Duggan knocks the Mountie down with a running elbow strike. He goes for the cover. Then Jerry sags, dives off the turnbuckle to break it up, but Duggan moves out the way and Sags accidentally lands on the Mountie. Then Duggan throws Jerry Sags out the ring and covers the Mountie for the win. Like I say, the match served its purpose, so no complaints from me. I thought it did what it needed to do, really.
Yeah, it was more to it wasn't it was more to do with the atmosphere rather than the actual match. Yeah,
Exactly, and not every match needs to be a 5-star classic, does it? Sometimes it's just about the entertainment side of it as well. And this very much was an entertainment match.
yeah. I'm trying to think. It's hard to think 30 years later if I saw that, because obviously it was like hard to see the matches. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Well, you would have
figure out
been
if I
there, wouldn't you? But it's just obviously it's just how much you remember. Because as we said, this is 30 years ago. SummerSlam was in 1992. We're now in 2022. So obviously our recollection of certain things is going to be a bit foggy. That's why we
yeah.
watched the WWE Network to get a refresher, didn't we?
I think I was 12 then.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would have been 15, I think. So yeah.
Oh, I got the
No,
I can't.
16, sorry, 16, yeah. We're both spring chickens back then, weren't we, Lionel? And by the way, I like your Royal Rumble t-shirt. You showed me that earlier, didn't you? I was very impressed. It's very
Yeah, I'm
wrestling
wearing it.
themed. I like how we're both wearing wrestling themed t-shirts. I've got my Bray Wyatt t-shirt again, and you got your Royal Rumble one. So very
This is more
appropriate.
of this is more of a game. This is supposed to be like a game version of it.
Oh well,
But
it's still wrestling related, so it counts.
I don't know why it's got Booker T amongst all those Ric Flair and Razor and Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior.
Okay, so the second dark match was Papa Shango against El Matador, Tito Santana. And this was actually originally supposed to be the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich, but Kerry Von Erich was actually on his way out of the company at this time. He was having some substance abuse issues, and sadly, we know how that ended for him. But
Oh,
yeah, so in the end, they replaced Kerry Von Erich with Tito Santana, and at this time, I was obviously Tito Santana's doing his El Matador gimmick that I just referenced. Before he became El Matador, he was actually losing quite regularly. I know he'd been Intercontinental champion at one point and tag team champion, but from when I started watching in the summer of 1990, he was mainly being used to put over newer workers who they were trying to establish. And
oh.
when he was El Matador, they did actually give him a brief push, but then he went back to putting over new workers again. And this was that match. It was to put over Papa Shango and make Papa Shango look formidable. Yes, I wasn't really a big fan of El Matador's gimmick, really. It was meant to give him a fresh coat of paint. Like I say, I didn't really do much with him. Only a very brief push. I don't know, really. I just felt it was a very dull gimmick and didn't really give him any more personality, did it? Really?
Someone I watched, someone on the thing about him said it was so bad the way they booked him, not very good. Yeah, same thing as you. Yeah.
Mm. But this was actually quite an open match. It wasn't a straightforward squash, this match. Santana did get some good offense in, but like I say, eventually Papa Shango wins with a shoulder breaker, which is no real surprise for anyone. What I did want to say, though, is that Tito Santana, even though he was being used to put people over, he was actually considered later that year to be world champion.
Oh.
And it is quite remarkable. I mean, because what happened was eventually they had Ric Flair beating Randy Savage for the title, which we knew was going to happen. Then not long after that, they wanted to go in a different direction and take the title off him, and they were discussing who they would give the title to. And Tito Santana actually featured very prominently on that list of people to take the title off Ric Flair.
Oh, that would have been good.
But obviously, in the end, they went with Bret Hart, and you can't really argue with that, can you? I think they made the right decision.
Yeah.
And also,
Yeah.
I think Tito Santana probably wasn't in the prime of his career, so it probably made sense not to give the title to him at that stage. And also, he'd not been built up to be a world champion, had he? You need months of booking to make him look formidable, don't you?
He had a different job just to try and make other people look good. Yeah.
exactly. And I think this match was he was the right opponent for Papa Shango, Charles Wright, as we know him, the Godfather, because Papa Shango was still quite green, and you needed an experienced hand like Tito Santana to work with him. Like I say, it wasn't a spectacular match, but it was what it needs to be. Really, it made Papa Shango look formidable, and that's what it was all about, really. Okay, so there was actually a third match as well that was cut from the broadcast, and that was the Berserker versus Tatanka. And this was actually quite a good match. I quite enjoyed this because again, you can watch it on YouTube, and it was very brief, but there was some good hard hitting action from Berserker. He looked really menacing. He's basically a rip off of Bruiser Brody, but it still works.
He said, "Oh, he used to say huss, huss, huss."
That's it, and that's what Bruiser Brody used to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I never forget. Yeah, he was quite good because I didn't know Brody. I didn't. I'm not. Wasn't. I didn't really. I've heard of him now and all the problems and stuff, but I never. But I never really seen him as a wrestler properly. But apparently he was a very. Besides his problems, he was a good wrestler.
Mm. It is a shame they cut this match from the broadcast because it was very enjoyable, and at the time Tatanka is having his undefeated streak, and he's part way through a story with Rick Martel, which we'll come to later. Um, but like I say, Rick Martel had another match on this card, and Tatanka had Berserker, so they were kept apart from this event. Hi everyone, we just took a quick break then because we were having some technical issues. My camera was a bit blurry, and also our time was running out on our Zoom meeting, so we're resuming again now. So yeah, what I wanted to say about that Tatanka match was, there's some good hard hitting action from Berserker. He looked really menacing, and he was beating up Tatanka sort of in and out the ring. Did a slam on the floor, and eventually Tatanka gets the upper hand, and he takes Berserker out to the floor again, does a slam out there himself as revenge. Then when they get back in the ring, Tatanka climbs up the turnbuckle, does a flying tomahawk chop. Then he does his fall away slam for the win. So Tatanka wins that match. What I also wanted to say was that there was another potential match for SummerSlam. It was planned at one point, but it never actually happened. Obviously, the Mountie ended up in a different match in the end. But in the run up to SummerSlam, I think before they decided to make it in London, they actually were saying they had an interview with Jimmy Hart and the Mountie where Jimmy Hart says to the Mountie, "You've got Sergeant Slaughter at SummerSlam." But obviously, those plans were quickly scrapped. But yeah, so it could have been Sergeant Slaughter versus the Mountie
Oh, that would have been good. Yeah,
because they were having a feud, weren't they, at the time?
yeah, that
So
would have been.
I suppose that was supposed to be the payoff, but it was never to be. So there you go. So what I want to talk about now is the actual broadcast as it's shown on the WWE network. Um, we start off with an advert for Ico Pro. Do you remember Ico Pro, Lionel?
I could put
Yeah.
or
You know,
advert.
yeah, Vince McMahon has all these different schemes that he plugs heavily, doesn't he, on the program, like the World Bodybuilding Federation and the whole 999 thing for the WWE Network. Well, Ico Pro was a training supplement that the WWE marketed to help get you in shape.
I don't think if I saw it, I would have not. If I saw it again, I would remember it after a while.
Yeah,
But offhand, I've forgotten it. Yeah.
yeah. It's one of Vince McMahon's many failed business ventures outside of the WWF. So then it goes to the fans waiting outside Wembley Arena or queuing up, and the fans are speculating whose side Mr. Perfect's going to be on out of the Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh yeah, that's one of the matches. That's one of the matches that I watched in detail. Yeah, as well as the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we'll come to that later. The actual broadcast starts off with Bobby Heenan and Vince McMahon, and they're just doing their introduction bit. And Bobby Heenan's wearing a crown, proclaiming himself the King of England.
Oh,
He said Sir Bobby, King of England. I think that's how he worded it. Typical Bobby
Oh,
Heenan stuff. He was on good form in this broadcast. That's one good thing about watching it after attending. You can actually hear Bobby Heenan's commentary.
yeah, he was saying a lot of funny things. Yeah,
So the first match is the Legion of Doom with Paul Ellering and Rocco against Money Inc. with Jimmy Hart. Now let's talk about Rocco to start with. That blooming doll that Paul Ellering carried around.
it's scary. Yeah,
It was awful. It was just like it made Legion of Doom a children's act rather than these sort of tough ass kickers.
because obviously we would have never seen it live, obviously, because it would have been tiny to see. Yeah, but
Yeah, but it was on TV in the build up to that as well. Because after they
but
lost the titles to Money Inc., they actually had some footage with Paul Ellering and the Legion of Doom rediscovering their roots. They visited an old home. They found Rocco the doll, and Paul Ellering thought this was the key to their revival.
oh my god, yeah. Whose idea was that? I don't know whose idea that was.
Well, I'll tell you whose idea it wasn't, and that was Hawk. He absolutely hated it.
Oh god, they went along with it though.
Well, this is the thing. This is the last we see of Legion of Doom for a while in its current form, because there were a lot of issues with Hawk at the time. Obviously, he was unhappy with the creative direction and the Rocco puppet, but also there were issues with his addictions as well.
And obviously that story from Animal saying when he was on the motorbike, he was like intoxicated, wasn't he? He was
That's
drunk at the
right.
time.
Yeah, yeah. So they drive in with these impressive gold spike pads and they shoulder pads, and they come in on these motorcycles. But apparently, Hawk was intoxicated when he rode to the ring, which is not so good, is it? Drunk driving in front of 80,000 people.
But yeah, but Animal said he's surprised how well he did for someone who's because he must have had obviously it was bad, but obviously he must have had the strength to carry it on. You
Hmm.
know,
Well, the match does work, but I think that's in spite of Hawk rather than because of him. I think you got two seasoned veterans in Owen R. Shyster, our hero Bray Wyatt's dad, and you've got Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. These are two highly experienced wrestlers who know all the fundamentals now to carry a match. And I think they were just working over Hawk, like doing like different holds on him, so that all the Hawk had to do was just lay there while they did those things to him. And then obviously Animal was so when they tagged him in, he could do his power moves. The ending is very interesting on this one. They go for a doomsday device, and Hawk climbs up the turnbuckle, but then one of them, I can't remember which one it was now, one of Money Inc. breaks it up, but then the match ends with Animal doing a power slam rather than the Doomsday device. So they obviously didn't trust Hawk to actually go up on the turnbuckle and deliver the move. He was that out of it. That's how I read it anyway.
it's a shame, but luckily they were in the ring with two old guards. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, the match was okay and it did work and the crowd were really into it. But like I say, that a lot of that was down to DiBiase and Shyster really, or Mike Rotundo to use his real name.
obviously it was hard for Animal because he had to put up with it because he couldn't wrestle if Hulk wasn't well enough, he couldn't because he couldn't be a tag team if his other partner's not fit enough to wrestle.
Mm. I mean, in the upcoming months, there was a big clear out of some big names like Hawk went, Kerry Von Erich went, Ultimate Warrior went, even Daveyboy. The two of the people in the main events ended up leaving, which is quite remarkable, really. And like I say, this was around the time where there was lots of controversy over steroids, so you can see why they kind of got rid of those people. What did happen was, I don't know if you remember this, after Hawk left, they did actually carry on the Legion of Doom, or they did promos for it anyway. They had Paul Ellering with Rocco again, Animal, and Crush. Crush was Animal's tag team partner, and they called themselves the Legion of Doom. I think that was mainly
Oh,
for house shows. We didn't see them wrestle on TV, but they did promos on TV for the house shows.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. But like I said, that was a short-lived thing. Next segment was Mean Gene Okerlund, the great Mean Gene, interviewing Ric Flair, and Ric Flair is complaining about not having a title match, and that is one of my pet peeves about this event. If I had one criticism, was it would be you didn't see Ric Flair wrestle. I mean, you got one of the biggest stars in wrestling. They don't even give him a match.
Oh, that's stupid. Yeah,
Yeah, and that would be the icing on the cake. See Ric Flair perform. I know he's a
yeah.
controversial character and he's done some bad things, but what a performer! And it would be so amazing just to see him, wouldn't it?
They must have had some reason why. I don't know. Maybe he was injured or something.
I think basically he was tied up in the storyline with Warrior and Savage. That's why. But I think they could have still given him a match of some description.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They do it now. Even if people are involved with other people, they still include other people in the match as well. You know,
Mm.
if that was now, he would have been in the match.
I mean, if it was a match against Coco Beware, that was still at least he'd be on the card, wouldn't he?
Oh yeah, Coco. Yeah, oh yeah, Coco.
I'm not saying love Coco Beware, but he wasn't one of the top draws, was he? But he was there just to put again other
I,
wrestlers over.
yeah, and I loved the way he came out with entertainment with the parrots. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going back to the Mean Gene interview. Mean Gene asks Ric Flair the $1 million question: whose corner is Mr. Perfect going to be in? Is it going to be the Ultimate Warrior or Randy Savage? And Flair answers, Mr. Perfect will be in the corner of the winner, which is a very clever
Oh,
answer. He doesn't answer it, but he sort of skips the question very cleverly. And then Sean Mooney interviews Virgil, who's having a match against Nails, and then it's the Virgil versus Nails match. And the storyline for Nails was that he was a prison inmate at Big Boss Man's prison, and he claims that Big Boss Man mistreated him. But obviously, we as Big Boss Man is a beloved babyface, none of us believe that. So
yeah.
what had happened in the run up to SummerSlam is he actually injures the Big Boss Man, and Big Boss Man's out of action.
That was one of the things I always remember with Boss Man. You know, if they ask you one of the feuds he have,
Hmm.
you'd say obviously Bobby Heenan about his us Bobby, that's what Bobby Heenan used to make fun of Boss Man's mom. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I never forget that. But I'll say it now because you mentioned Nails. Apparently, and I'm not talking about Kamala. I'm not talking about his match. I'm talking about because what he said about Nails, who's in SummerSlam. He was downstairs and he heard him Nails having a light go at Vince McMahon and saying because he's not getting paid what he should be paid and apparently Nails even called the police on Vince McMahon.
Yeah, this is quite a remarkable story, really. So, this was what happened was it was all about this SummerSlam match, or that was the beginning of it, certainly. Nails thought he should get a bigger payday from this match, and obviously Vince McMahon thought differently. So, what happened was Nails attacked Vince McMahon, if for real, backstage. It wasn't SummerSlam; this was later down the road, but.
Oh,
So Vince McMahon claims that Nails assaulted him, and I think it's quite clear he did. But what's remarkable is Nail accuses Vince of sexual assault.
oh God.
Yeah, so he was implying that Vince was basically just sexually harassing him, which is you know.
Crazy.
So Virgil at this time, they did actually have a run with him with $1 million belt, didn't they? Previously in the previous year, and he was being used as a mid carder as part of the storyline against Ted DiBiase. Virgil beats Ted DiBiase for the $1 million belt after he leaves his services. And then then Virgil has it for quite a while, but then Ted DiBiase wins it back with help from the Repo Man.
Oh, the Reaper.
Yeah. I'll come back to the Repo
Oh,
Man later, but yes, so that's the end of Virgil's run. Really, they don't really. They just use him to put other wrestlers. I think they obviously didn't see much upside to him as a superstar. But yeah, sadly, Virgil's not in very good health at the moment, and we wish him all the best. He's actually quite an interesting character online. He he comes up with quite outlandish claims. I won't go into them here, but he's quite a character.
yeah, yeah. I've heard also about what you said about him charging people loads of money for autographs or something. Was that you? Did you say that?
Yeah, I mean there have been tales. Obviously, we can't confirm or deny them, but there have been
Rumors.
tales of him going to different autograph signings, saying that both him and Ted DiBiase will be there, and then not turning up. They give him the money in advance, and he doesn't turn up. And then, like I say, they come to Ted DiBiase and say, why didn't you show up? And he said, well, I didn't know anything about it.
Oh God. Hopefully, it's not true.
And this actually ties into something else I was going to say. Because Virgil's been in poor health, Ted DiBiase has been saying, despite what happened, in the past, he'd be willing to do some appearances with Virgil to help him raise money. But then Virgil's turned around and said, no, I don't want anything to do with him.
I didn't know he was in poor health.
Yeah. In this match, Nails beats Virgil with a sleeper hold. This match is nothing special, but it serves a purpose again of making Nails look formidable. So again, no complaints from me. It does what it needs to do. It's not fancy, but it serves a purpose. And also, it's building up to Nails taking on the Big Boss Man later, so that's why they make him look strong in this match, so they can serve him up to the Big Boss Man, because at that time, Big Boss Man was quite a big deal, wasn't he, in WWF?
Oh yeah, that's how I want to remember him. Not I don't want to remember him as Vince McMahon's sidekick.
Yeah, and after the match, Nails beats up Virgil again to show how sadistic he is. Again, just to show what a threat he is. Next segment is Lord Alfred Hayes outside Macho Man's dressing room. Again, he's looking into the Mr. Perfect situation, trying to work out where Mr. Perfect is, whether he's in Randy Savage's dressing room. Now, with Lord Alfred Hayes, at one point, he was how Americans imagined us Brits to be, didn't they? Jolly good day, chap. I'm just going to the garden for a spot of tea.
Oh yeah, I liked him. He was quite good.
But yeah, it was. That was how they used to view us Brits. I mean, William Regal's played into that as well, hasn't he? I've been besmirched.
Oh yeah, but when it comes to that kind of voice,
Yeah.
he had the most English voice. Yeah.
But I mean, us English always see the funny side, don't we? Just we actually quite enjoy these silly parodies of us, don't we? We don't get offended.
I know. Yeah, because we do it back to them anyway, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we just say, "Oh yes, jolly good day, old chap." Yes, that's us. Though now people just like when they impersonate a Brit, they go, "All right, mate," The next segment is Mean Gene interviewing Sensational Sherry, and this is for the Rick Martel and Shawn Michaels match. Yeah.
For some reason, that was the first one I was watching, and I kind of remember it roughly. Like, in some ways, Sherry played just as big a part as the wrestlers in that one.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, she was central to the story. So in the interview, she says that she's with Shawn Michaels, isn't she? But Rick Martel's been flirting with her in the build up to SummerSlam. Because this all starts off where Rick Martel's challenging Bret Hart for the Intercontinental title. He gets Bret Hart in the Boston Crab, which is Rick Martel's finishing maneuver. Bret Hart's in a compromising position where he looks like he could very well either pass out or tap out. But then Shawn Michaels comes to ringside, who's Bret Hart's nemesis, and he starts attacking Bret Hart from the outside, which causes Rick Martel to get disqualified.
Oh my God.
So Rick Martel is not very pleased with Shawn Michaels, and that's what starts this storyline. Like I say, in the weeks that follow, he starts flirting with Sherry. Now, one funny thing is that there's Rick Martel, but that's also Sherry's surname on Martel as well. So, but
Oh,
thankfully they're not related because otherwise that'd be dodgy. But yeah, that they share the same surname is thankfully a coincidence. And in the interview, Sherry's saying that she's made both men promise not to slap each other in the face, not to hit each other in the face. That's that because she doesn't want their handsome good looks ruined.
oh yeah, that was one of the conditions that was put in the match. Yeah. Oh, God. Can you imagine that? Roman Reigns versus Owens, and but no one must touch their faces.
So we go to the match now, and Vince McMahon says to Bobby Heenan, "Who's the most conceited?" And Bobby Heenan replies, "Well, it's not Howard Finkel."
Oh, Howard Finkel's he's still the best. He's still best announcer ever.
Yeah, we love to think, don't we?
Yeah, it's a shame he's not.
Hmm.
He'll always be remembered. Yeah.
So yeah, Rick Martel when he comes out to the ring, he's wearing one of Tatanka's feathers because again, this is part of the Rick Martel Tatanka storyline. Because I think Tatanka beats him at WrestleMania, and then after that, in a sort of TV show, Martel attacks Tatanka and steals one of his feathers. So that's kind of keeps the storyline going.
Yeah, I like Rick Martel. I always remember him squeezing the perfume.
Hmm.
He still doesn't look that bad now for his age.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think they said he wasn't the best on the microphone naturally, but once he had the model character, he was so into that character that he actually it improved his promos and things like that. He had a character to play that he was comfortable with.
I don't think I remember him as a face. He was always a heel, wasn't he, mainly?
Yeah, because he started off in Strike Force, didn't he, with Tito Santana?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So
they were tag team champions. Yeah, at one point.
oh,
But yeah, what happens is they lose the tag team titles, and then at some point in the future, they have I think it may be in a WrestleMania, maybe WrestleMania 5. They have a match against the Brainbusters, which is Arn and Tully, and then Tito accidentally hits Martel. Just the move goes wrong. And then he goes to tag Martel, and then Martel just walks away, and that's when he turns heel.
and then that's when he's been heel ever since. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, what is interesting about this match is that Sensational Sherry has a very revealing outfit. Do you remember that?
Oh, she always did, but yeah, this was more revealing.
Yeah, her cheeks were fully on display, put it that way.
And she was playing them both for fools, wasn't she? Really?
Well, yeah, I think in the end storyline, she was enjoying them both fighting for her attention.
Because in the match, she pretended to collapse on the floor, didn't she?
Exactly. Yeah, we'll get to that.
So I'm going too fast.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah. Yeah, we'll cover that now, actually. Yeah, so things get heated during the match, and then Sean and Rick do the one thing they promise not to do, and they slap each other in the face. And then Sherry starts screaming at them to stop, and then she pulls the ultimate card. She pretends to faint. So now they're more interested in seeing to Sherry than fighting each other. So then both men try and attend to her outside the ring, but then they both fight outside over who gets to tend to her. So then, as they're fighting, they both get counted out. So it's no one wins the match. And then Sean carries her over his shoulder. Again, her cheeks fully on display. Martel attacks Sean. Sean drops Sherry. Then Martel carries her back. Then Sean knocks them over, and the referee escorts Martel back. And then Sean carries Sherry. But then Rick returns, playing to the crowd like a baby face, and then throws the water over Sean, but drenches Sherry in the process. So then Sean drops Sherry, chases after Rick, and then Sherry is left on the floor, drenched and humiliated.
Oh God,
And it's
that
a
was
short match, and if you forgive the fact we don't get a clear winner, it is very entertaining. I remember it. I remember myself enjoying
yeah.
it at the time, and people around me. I remember people in the crowd were saying how funny it was. So it served its purpose.
Yeah, they got it right there. Yeah.
I think so, yeah. Okay, we're going to take another break now and we'll hand you over to Cecil because our time is running low. Hello, my name is Cecil. I am a stand up comedian, but at the moment I am sitting down. That's a joke. If you want to hear more jokes, then check me out at jingtvonline.com. You can also search for Jing TV Online on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, a number of places really. So please come and join me and have lots and lots of laughs. Ha ha ha. Right, so we're back from another break, and the next segment is the Nasty Boys, an interview with them, and they're laughing at sensational Sherry being drenched, and they're saying they want to be the next tag team title contenders, and they pressure Jimmy Hart about whether they're going to get a tag team title shot. And Jimmy's sort of not sure. He said, well, Money Inc. And then he says, yeah, sure, I'll give you a title shot. And that's the end of that segment. And that leads us into the tag team title match, which is the Natural Disasters versus the Beverly Brothers. And the Beverly Brothers are also known as the Destruction Crew, Mike Enos and Wayne Bloom. But in WWF, they were known as Bo and Blake Beverly. And yeah, in when they were the Destruction Crew, they were actually AWA Tag Team Champions. They only had a very short tenure in WWF, didn't they? But
yeah, I know the name, but I can't remember any proper like. I can't even really remember much at all. If anything,
yeah,
I remember the name, but
I think I most remember them for their feud against Legion of Doom, and it wasn't their fault, but it was a bit of a silly feud where they were they were calling the Legion of Doom sissies, and like they'd actually when they beat opponents, they spray paint on their faces LOS Legion of Sissies. But they're actually a really good tag team. Yeah, so the match starts with the genius reading a poem.
I can never forget the genius. Yeah.
My favorite poem of the genius is Behold, I am the genius, the world's smartest man, with unlimited ability to think. On the other hand, I'm facing the mighty Superfly, who may be Charles Darwin's missing link.
He was quite entertaining.
Yeah, I love Lanny Poffo, yeah. He's a real character, wasn't he?
But I didn't realize that was Macho Man's brother at the
Yes,
time.
indeed, yeah. So yeah, this match was a lot better than I remembered. Because when you hear this match coming up, thinking, oh, but then actually, yeah, when I watched, I thought, oh, this is all right. Actually, it's a good mix of styles. The Beverly Brothers being fast paced, with the Natural Disasters being crushing brutes. Everyone played their role well, so no complaints there. Partway through this match, Bobby Heenan announces that Shawn Michaels has left Wembley Stadium. Do you remember that? It was when Shawn first turned heel, they used to have someone announce Shawn Michaels has left the building. As though someone like Elvis, like a big star, and you hear people like saying, "Who cares?"
He had a lot of attitude in that time, Shawn Michaels.
Shawn Michaels' an attitude, never.
No, but I remember because this is one I told you about. Remember I told you about? I didn't realize until recently. This was at SummerSlam. Remember I sent you that thing saying that at SummerSlam '92, Earthquake was only 29. Believe
I know.
He looked older than 20. He looked in his like 40s or 50s.
Yeah, let's say 40s. Let's be nice to him. Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of people said they were better as heels than faces. Really, that's one of the things that upset me was when I never forget that when Tugboat turned on the Bushwhackers and joined Earthquake.
Yeah, that was when the Natural Disasters formed, wasn't it? Yeah.
That's one of the things I always remember because I used to like Tugboat. I used to do the tugging like that.
A little bit of trivia for you. Sergeant Slaughter faced Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 7. Well, the original plan was that Tugboat would be the person who faced him. He'd be Sheik Tugboat, and he'd beat Warrior for the title, and then face Hogan for the title at WrestleMania 7. But they went with Sergeant Slaughter, and it was a controversial storyline, wasn't it? America versus Iraq. Maybe we'll cover that another time.
Was it when he burnt Hulk Hogan's face or something?
That's right, yeah. But it was more about using the Gulf War where people were dying as part of a wrestling storyline.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've seen a lot of interviews of him saying him and his wife kept having death threats and stuff. It was very serious. They had to call the police sometimes because people were actually taking it so seriously.
Mm. Well, General Adnan, who really was Iraqi and really did know Saddam Hussein, he got loads of death threats.
And I know those boots he got. Apparently, Slaughter said it was actually a gift from Saddam Hussein.
I'm not sure about
I told you that. I told you that before, and you said I don't think so.
that. No,
Yeah,
no. They said it in storyline. I don't think that's real though.
it's not like so unbelievable. You can't. But I don't know. I don't know if Saddam Hussein was interested in wrestling.
No, no. I think it is unbelievable because obviously he's not going to give his boots to a heel, is he? Someone's supposed to be a baddie. Because by making this person a baddie and making him pro Iraq, you're saying Iraq is bad. So Saddam Hussein's not going to think, oh, let's reward this person who's making me look bad by giving them some of my boots.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I
Yeah,
suppose you're right. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't buy that personally. So yeah, a lot of this match was the Beverleys double teaming Typhoon, and he keeps trying to tag in Earthquake, but keeps getting frustrated by them. Eventually, he does get the hot tag to Earthquake. Yeah, the match ends with Earthquake pinning Bo with a running splash. After the match, the Genius complains and he gets dumped out of the ring by the natural disasters. And the crowd was surprisingly into this as well. Yeah, I say it was a reasonably good match. I thought it would be a lot worse than that. So the next section is with the Bushwhackers, and there's some there's something they're saying about go to Buckingham Palace and using the royal throne as in the toilet. It's just
Oh,
it's a bit naff. I'm not really sure why it made it onto the broadcast really, but it is what it is. And And then after that, Lord Alfred Hayes is outside the Ultimate Warrior's dressing room. He thinks Mr. Perfect is in there, and he tries barging into the room, but he Ultimate Warrior just doesn't let him in. And Lord Alfred Hayes is actually quite offended by this. He says that it's really rude, but he's just tried to barge into someone's dressing room, so I don't really see the logic there.
yeah. Well, so obviously, Ultimate Warrior just pushed it closed just so he can't come in. Yeah.
Yeah, and it adds to the mystery whose side is Mr. Perfect on.
Wasn't sure whose side he'll be on, if any.
Mm. We'll come to that in a bit. So the next match is Repo Man versus Crush. And apparently this was left off the UK broadcast, but it was shown in America. And what's interesting about this match is these are former tag team partners facing each other, but no mention is made of it because Crush was obviously in Demolition as Crush, and Repo Man was Demolition Smash. They're former tag team partners. They're having a match together, but no mention is made that they used to be tag team partners because they're in different gimmicks, and it's very strange that that doesn't get reference.
Yeah, but these days now it would have got reference now.
I would have thought so. Yeah, maybe they just didn't see any money in doing that angle, really.
I liked him in that character as well. He was okay, but it was never going to be a top. It was never going to be as popular as Demolition Man.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you got to say about Barry Darso, Repo Man, is that he's very versatile, wasn't he? I mean, it was a very different character to Smash, wasn't it? Because Repo Man was this sneaky heel, whereas Smash was a bit more of a sort of an ass kicker, a brutal wrestler, someone you didn't want to mess with. So it was just that contrast was very impressive that he managed that.
Yeah, very clever.
Yeah. I have to say though, this match is awful. It's very disjointed. I think Crush is very green, and it shows in this match. The match ends with Crush doing a submission on Repo Man. I think it was just really to show off Crush's strength, really, and just again make him look like this dominant baby face.
head move, that hands on the head move, and
Yeah,
he
exactly. Yeah.
then picked him up in the air and then
Hmm.
dropped him down. So Repo Man is on the floor sitting up and he's doing it. Yeah.
But for me, this was the second worst match of the night. It just came across as very sloppy, and like I say, just it didn't really do Crush any favors. I don't think.
It's one of those you could have like fast forwarded a little bit and then watched. You know,
Yeah,
it's
I
like
think it was just about giving Crush that win on the pay per view, really.
yeah, it's like when I watched the Profits. I know it's to do today with Raw.
Hmm.
When I watched the Profits versus the Alpha Academy, I wasn't too interested. I just fast forwarded it a bit because I'm not too bothered about it because it's not going really. And I'm fed up. There's not much happening, you know. So sometimes I fast forward it. That's why I probably missed Alexa thing.
Yeah.
And I'm annoyed, but luckily for TikTok, I'll get to see it again because I'm sure someone will put that on as well. Because yeah, but obviously it's like sometimes you fast forward some bits and sometimes I tell you bits that you haven't seen. You know,
Well, it's not like I fast forward it. It's just like I'm doing something else. I'm not paying full attention. I have it on the background, and I sort of just turn my head every now and then.
yeah, because you're doing your work at the same time.
Yeah, or yeah, I'll just play the game or something. But I sort of can't. I can't be watching 8 hours of wrestling a week really. Just sitting there watching. I need to be doing something else that's because otherwise it'd just be too much. I think. Yeah, what I found funny about the end of this match was when Crush wins, again, shows off impressive strength. Vince McMahon says that Crush is a proponent of the Ica Pro regime. Again, going back
Oh,
to the Ica Pro thing. And
oh,
I think the funny thing is that later on, Crush would get arrested for steroids.
oh my god,
So it wasn't Ica Pro he was on.
yeah, oh my god. Everyone seems to be on it.
Yeah.
It seems a lot worse then and now even.
No, no, no. It's cleaned up a lot now. I think in the past it was really bad. We won't go into this now, but one of the things we're going to discuss about Chris Benoit in our next episode is to do with steroids, isn't it? And whether they played a part. But we won't go into that now. The next match is the world title match, and Ultimate Warrior versus Randy Savage. But before that, we have Mean Gene doing a little introduction, showing the events that led up to it, and again, whose side Mr. Perfect might be on. There's all that speculation. And at the commentary booth, Vince McMahon grills Bobby Heenan because Bobby Heenan's associated with Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect. And he says to Bobby Heenan, whose side is Mr. Perfect going to be on? And Bobby Heenan says he doesn't know, but Vince McMahon doesn't believe him. But Bobby Heenan says they didn't tell Bobby Heenan to protect him. And in storyline, I think that's true. I think Bobby Heenan doesn't know, but and again, that just adds to the mystery.
Because it's no, because I remember what to call it when Ultimate Warrior was about to do his, when he got about to do his like jump, go from rope to rope, and then do a jump. Mr. Perfect pulled his leg out, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Now, the previous match was the classic WrestleMania 7 match, where it's a career-ending match. So whoever loses the match has to retire, basically. And we know Warrior wins that match by pinfall. It's a fantastic match. Again, probably due to Randy Savage, because I think at the time Randy Savage was taking some time off, wasn't he, to recharge his batteries and heal up a bit.
Yeah, it was it was quite. It looked very. They both looked very so knackered afterwards. Yeah.
But yeah, so Warrior won that WrestleMania 7 match, and then Randy Savage took some time off. Then they found a way to sort of bring him back into WWE. They sort of WWF. They had a storyline with Jake the Snake, didn't he, where he gate crashed Savage's wedding to Miss Elizabeth, and as a result of that, in the end, he ended up being reinstated as a wrestler.
Is that to do? Is that the storyline where he got bit by the snake, Damien?
Yeah, that's part of, yeah. We won't go into that now, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that was all part of that storyline. Yeah, it wasn't Damien though, was it? Because I think um, Earthquake had killed Damien in a previous angle.
Yeah, squashed him. Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because then Jake had a new snake called Lucifer, didn't he? But then this wasn't.
yeah.
I don't think this was Lucifer that bit Savage. It was a cobra
Oh,
because I
oh,
think Lucifer was a python.
you just reminded me of the earthquake squashing. Yeah,
And what was interesting about this event, SummerSlam '92, is you two main events were babyface versus babyface. Again, I don't know another event where the two biggest matches were baby faces facing each other, and also we have a heel versus heel match, don't we, with Shawn Michaels and Rick Martel. So it's quite a unique setup this event.
yeah, because it's a bit more relaxed now,
Yeah,
but it's not like yeah, but it's
the
not like
lines are a bit more blurred, aren't they, with babyface and heel? But back then it was again quite the novelty to have those kind of matches. Yeah, I quite enjoyed this match. Again, it was a count out finish, which was maybe not what you want really, but yeah, it was just something that you could really get invested in, wasn't it? And
yeah,
I was actually cheering on Warrior in that match. Who were you cheering on?
it probably would have been Warrior because I was Hulk Hogan and Warrior fan,
Yeah,
but I liked it. I liked it when Macho Man went on the top to do his move. Then he looked at the crowd as if to say, "Oh, these two, Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect, must have had something to do with this. That's why he's injured on the floor." Ultimate Warrior, and then he decided to jump on top of Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect instead. And then,
that's right. Yeah, because they make it that uh, first of all, Mr. Perfect attacks Randy Savage, so it looks like Warriors sided with Mr. Perfect. Um, but then later on in the match, Mr. Perfect attacks Warrior, doesn't he?
yeah, 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 and then yeah, that's what. And then in the end, and in the end, it's good that Ultimate Warrior gets a chair and starts running towards uh, to swing it at Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect, and they run away. And I like it how he comes back and helps. He helps Andy Savage. It's good.
Yeah. So the match ends with, like I say, as you said, Randy Savage does that dive off the turnbuckle when he realizes that Mr. Perfect and Ric Flair are on neither of their side. They're just causing disruption. So Randy Savage jumps off the turnbuckle at Mr. Perfect, and Mr. Perfect whacks him with the chair. And as a result, Randy Savage gets counted out, doesn't he?
Yeah. So I'm going. I'm sorry, I was going too far ahead. I was getting too carried away with what I was saying. So,
That's
but
okay. Yeah. Yes. So Flair and Perfect attack Savage on the outside. Then Warrior comes to the rescue, chasing them back to the dressing room. And then they announce Warrior as the winner by count out, but they announce the Randy Savage is still the champion because it was by count out. And then he helps Savage up and they celebrate together, don't they? Both sort of pose for the crowd.
yeah, and he gives Savage the belt to hold. Gives him his belt.
One thing that's been heavily rumored is that going into SummerSlam, Vince McMahon wanted Warrior to turn heel and team up with Flair and Perfect. Basically Warrior refused, but it's when he refused is also debated as well. With some people saying he refused at the last minute, but I can't see Warrior wanting to turn heel. He'd be too invested in his character to do that.
Yeah, I can't imagine them. I can't imagine Ultimate Warrior character working with Ric Flair. No, it wouldn't seem
Yeah,
right. He would have to change his gimmick completely.
yeah. And I think as a Warrior fan, then I would have been devastated if he turned heel right in front of my eyes. Now, after the match, Mean Gene interviews Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect, and Perfect says there was a deal, but it was a deal between him and Ric Flair. There was never a deal
Ah,
with Warrior or Savage, yeah. And Flair says, it wasn't right that he wasn't given the world title match, and he says the belt is coming back to him eventually.
Oh,
And obviously that
yeah.
does happen, doesn't it? Thanks to Razor Ramon in a Savage Flair rematch. Because I think what I assumed at that time as a fan, I thought they would have Flair beat Savage. I knew that was going to happen, but then I thought Flair would lose that to Warrior maybe at WrestleMania the next year, but that never happened because Warrior's gone in a couple of months, isn't he? So.
Oh yeah. So some of the plans never worked out. Yeah.
But I don't know if that was their plan anyway, but that's just what I assumed as a fan.
Yeah. I'd like. Yeah. Yeah. Because they probably changed things so many times. You know.
Mm. I mean, what I also assumed was that when Warrior left, I thought, well, what they're going to do now is they're going to have Mr. Perfect versus Ric Flair at WrestleMania for the title. I assumed that Flair would get the title off Bret Hart, and then he would defend it against Mr. Perfect at WrestleMania. But again, that never happened either.
Oh, that would have been that would have been good. Ric Flair versus
Yeah.
Mr. Perfect.
Yeah, but at that time, I think by the time WrestleMania come around, Ric Flair had gone, hadn't he? So that never happened.
Oh God, a lot of things never happened.
Yeah, a lot of big names departed, didn't they? In that between that SummerSlam and the next WrestleMania 8, it was quite remarkable, really. Okay, so the next match is Undertaker versus Kamala. And during this time, Harvey Whippleman is arguing with Howard Finkel. Do you remember that? They'd have often they'd have little arguments, wouldn't they? And Finkel would announce him as Dr. Harvey Whippleman. He'd say it with distaste.
Oh yeah, Doctor. Yeah, Harvey Whippleman. Oh, I remember him. He was annoying.
Mm, yeah. Oh, and this match was awful. This was the worst match of the night. It was brief, but it was diabolical. I mean, I owe Undertaker a massive apology because around this time, I thought Undertaker was a bad wrestler, but it was just the
Oh,
opponents they put him against was the problem. Like people like Kamala, Giant Gonzalez, these like immobile wrestlers who couldn't give him a good match. I mean, ironically, years later, Undertaker's been in some of my favorite matches, but yeah, this match was abysmal. It really was definitely the worst match of the night for me.
yeah.
Um,
Because I remember because when I said about Kamala before, he actually he personally complained about the Undertaker getting more money than him.
oh, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Obviously, both Kamala and Giant Gonzalez are no longer with us, so I don't want to be too mean about them. But um, I think that was a bit silly on Kamala because Undertaker's the big name attraction. He's not really. He's just someone who's been brought in as an opponent for the Undertaker. That's his purpose. So I think it's a bit silly that he would expect to earn the same amount as the Undertaker.
he liked the Undertaker. I think it's because he was older than the Undertaker, so he probably thought that he should get more because obviously he's the elder one. You know.
Yeah. But there's no doubt the Undertaker is the star, and Kamala has just been brought in to work with the Undertaker. So I think he should be grateful, really, that he was even given that spot. And let's be honest, it was a spot he didn't really deliver in. It was a very weak performance, a very poor match.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Obviously, the entrance was good with the Hoyt Hurst and stuff.
Mm.
The Hurst coming out and stuff.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, that was very memorable. Yeah, and they were
Yeah.
speculating whether that would be for Kamala.
Oh,
That hers. Yeah.
it's funny you think all these things you think you've forgotten, you remember. You know,
Mm.
it's crazy. Uh, hopefully, another 30 years, we can do another podcast.
If
And
we're
we'll
still
be
alive, then yeah.
no, we'll both be in care homes.
Yeah. I remember when.
Yeah. What I think they should do, and that sounds silly, but I think some of the cinemas should show things like that in the cinema so people can watch in this. It would be nice to watch it in this. I know they did one wrestling event in the cinemas
Yeah. I think
recently.
I think I think it does happen. Yeah. Just need to find where, really, don't you? So the match ends with Kim Chi running in the ring and attacking Undertaker with the pith helmet, and he tries ramming it into the Undertaker's groin, which gets Kamala disqualified. And then Kamala attacks the Undertaker after the match to continue the feud because they have a blow off match at the Survivor Series where Undertaker finally gets the win, and it was a very short match as well. I think it was about 3 or 4 minutes. After the match, Kamala, Kimchi, and Harvey Wilson retreat to the dressing room. Like I say, this was an abysmal match, and it's definitely the weakest match of the night. Right, we're going to take a break now, and then we'll come back and we will discuss the main event. Okay, so we just returned from another break, and now we're going to talk about the main event. It starts off with Sean Mooney interviewing Daveyboy Smith, and Sean Mooney asks Daveyboy about the pressures on the family that this match has caused, and Daveyboy says he didn't make the match, Jack Tunney did. And Bulldog says when he's going to wrestle Bret, he's going to pretend he's never met him. And then Mean Gene interviews Bret, and Bret actually says he takes offense to Bulldog saying he's going to pretend he never met him. Bret says that Davey wouldn't be in the WWF if it wasn't for him. And then Bret blames Daveyboy for causing family tension. Then the Balmoral Pipers come out, and then Roddy Piper joins them and starts playing the bagpipes himself. Although I suspect he was faking it. I don't think he was really playing it personally, but I could be wrong. But it just didn't seem genuine to me. And then Sean Mooney interviews Diana Hart, who is Daveyboy's wife and Bret Hart's sister. She says she's worried about them hurting each other, and that the family means more to her than the Intercontinental title and things like that. So it just, again, she plays her part in building up the effect it's having on her and her family, which is quite good. And then British Bulldog comes to the ring accompanied by Lennox Lewis. Do you remember Lennox Lewis's career as a boxer?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's one of the things I saw when I was looking it up. I remember Lennox Lewis coming out as.
Yeah, I think this is just before things start working out for him. Really, like there were a few hurdles along the way, but he had his match against Razor Ruddock, and he knocked him out really quickly. It's a very impressive showing. They actually announced this match is coming up in the future, and then later on, obviously, eventually, he takes the title off Evander Holyfield. So yeah, his moments of destiny were still to come, really.
Yeah, obviously, it was a good. The match was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could argue this was the best match of the night. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. Actually, was this your favorite match of the night?
It probably was because of all the connections, like family connections and British connection, and otherwise, if it wasn't for that, obviously it would be Warrior and Randy Savage would have been the main event, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I was looking back at it after I listened to Bret Hart speaking about that match. After I was watching it, and I could see at one point Bulldog looked like he was in another planet. Yeah, he was shaking his head like he's all confused. Yeah.
What Bret Hart has said afterwards in his book and things like that is that Davey Smith was in a bad place mentally and physically going into that match, and that he'd actually got high the night before and wasn't really in a good state to wrestle. He's forgotten the match they'd agreed upon.
It's like you said about Hulk against who they were fighting, like the ones who know what they're doing. It's lucky that Bret Hart was very expert wrestler, so he knew exactly how to make it look like he's like yeah, he managed to. No, he did some good stuff at the end. I think for the last 30, I think for a little bit he did okay, but I think you could tell his face was, you could tell he was all confused looking. Yeah.
But to be fair, we wouldn't have seen that so much, would we, from our vantage point, as we were up in the gods. But
Yeah, but now, I mean, now I've rewatched it and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, as you said, doing sleeper holds and all that kind of thing is quite good because you can actually whisper he can whisper into his ear to remind him to do things if he forgets. Yeah,
exactly.
obviously, yeah, because now even now you've sometimes if you're lucky, sometimes you occasionally hear someone whispering something. You know they're whispering what to do. Yeah, it was a good match. Besides the emotional thing, I think obviously Savage versus Warrior would have been the main event in my eyes, but because it was in England and it's
Mhm.
Bulldogs, it
Well,
had to.
I think if SummerSlam hadn't been at Wembley Stadium, we would have got a Shawn Michaels Bret Hart ladder match. That's what was rumored to be the match that would have happened if it had been in Washington, um, and that would have been probably the first ladder match. But yeah, it ended up being Bulldog versus Bret Hart, and then a couple of months later, Shawn beats Bulldog for the title there. Then Bulldog gets released.
And obviously, I know he came back in later days, but it
Mhm.
wasn't the same anymore, was it?
I disagree. I think all right. Maybe he wasn't. Actually, no, I do disagree because he was involved in world title matches, wasn't he? He didn't win the title, but he was a challenger for Shawn Michaels' world title, so he was featured in some prominent spots. But yeah, this is a good match despite Daveyboy Smith not being in the best state. I mean, you say he was a little bit worse from where from the night before, but he wasn't as bad as Hawk was. Like Hawk was actually intoxicated coming into the match. I think Daveyboy Smith wasn't intoxicated when he was wrestling, but he was in such a bad state from his previous indulgences. He was sober, but he just wasn't in a good mental state to remember what had been agreed. So that's why Bret Hart led him in the match.
Yeah, he was more. Yeah, he wasn't as bad as Hulk, but he was just a bit. Probably lost the
Mm,
storyline in his head a bit. The
yeah.
story.
Davey Boy pins Bret. So basically, Bret goes for a sunset flip, but Davey Boy holds on to the legs and then pins him, and that's when how he wins the title. So Bret puts Davey Boy over. Davey Boy is the hero of the hour in terms of storyline, but then a couple of months later, as we say, Davey Boy's gone, and then Bret goes on to become the world champion. So obviously, Bret did himself a lot of favors with this match. They must have seen how he carried the match, how he made Davey Boy look good, and as a result, they rewarded him with the world title.
Yeah, and also I remember as Bret Hart was going to go out the ring, all the fans were saying, "Just go in and shake his hand." And
Mm,
you saw a picture of you saw Diana saying, you could lip read what she was saying. She said, "Just shake his hand."
mm,
And then they shook hands, and then she came into the ring, and then they to be fair, the way they're so tired that Bret Hart looked like he looked all obviously purely because of all the work he did, because he had to do extra. He had to work for two sometimes, didn't he?
mm.
And
But also, Bret Hart was very annoyed about that spot at the end where he goes away, looking like he's annoyed that he comes back and makes up with Davey Boy. He felt Davey ruined that spot because I think Davey was playing to the crowd when he should have been trying to sort of encourage Bret to shake his hand. So Bret was annoyed with
yeah,
Davey about that he didn't actually do what he was supposed to do in that instance.
yeah,
But I think Bret was being a bit too harsh, really, a bit too overcritical because I think it came across well. I think the crowd were still really into it, weren't they? And they were booing Bret when he wasn't shaking Davey Boy's hand when he was walking away as a bad sportsman. So then he has a change of heart. He comes back and he does endorse Davey, doesn't he?
yeah. But you can tell from the reaction of Bret Hart, he was genuinely not happy. Not only in the storyline, but genuinely not happy. And it must have been horrible for the wife, for his wife and Bret's sister. Yeah,
Yeah, but that's all storyline, isn't it? I mean, that they're all working together behind the scenes, so it is purely kayfabe.
yeah, that was a good. And I remember obviously after the match, I remember we couldn't find where the car was parked. Because my dad at the time was going to come and pick us up afterwards.
Yeah.
It took us ages. It took ages because there's so many cars. It took us ages to find that the right our car before we got in the car to go home. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember at the end of the event, I don't remember the going home bit, but I remember the leaving the building, walking down some steps. I think we had to walk. We went out a different way to which we came in. Had to walk down some steps, and I think we weren't too far from where Vince McMahon and Bobby Heenan were, and you could see them having a conversation. I couldn't tell what it was being said, but you could tell Heenan was saying something humorous just by the expression on his face.
Oh,
So
you should have run down and because you're only a teenager, so they might have given you an autograph.
no, I wasn't close enough to do that, but I was close enough to see them talking, and people were shouting "Weasel, Weasel" at him as they were
Oh,
going by. Yeah,
oh yeah, yeah. It's funny to Vince. It's funny to Vince think at that time no one knew who Vince McMahon was besides a commentator. No one knew who. Yeah, it's weird. And then
now everyone knows. Yeah,
but because I did go to another event, UK Rampage, 1992, I think it was.
hmm.
92 or something, 90. I don't know. And I went with my brother's friend, and we had good. Yeah, I can't remember the matches at all, but all I remember is I know Vader, I know Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader was there, I
All
think.
right.
But we had good seats. We're like on the like where the ring is. We're like 3 rows back from the ring.
Yeah,
But obviously SummerSlam was obviously the main attraction, obviously. But it's just that I was a bit too. I think I was too young to really appreciate the actual whole proper storyline until now.
hmm. Yeah. I think you could argue that it's one of the better SummerSlams, isn't it? '92. Um,
Yeah,
I think
apparently
that,
it's been voted. It's been voted. Apparently Bret Hart and Daveyboy Smith has been voted one of the best ever matches in SummerSlam
yeah, it's
history.
hard to argue that, isn't it? Really. I mean, it's just good storytelling. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing with Bret Hart. He doesn't have necessarily flashy matches like Shawn Michaels, which I'm a big Shawn Michaels fan, so I do like that. But Bret Hart's very good at telling the story. I mean, I would actually say I preferred Bret's match against Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 8. Yeah, I'd prefer his match against Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 8 because I felt that also told a very good story. And like when Roddy Piper considers cheating to win the match. And again, that's all about relationships, isn't it? They've got this bond going back, him and Piper, and now they're facing each other for the title, and tension starts brewing. I think that's a really good story. But overall, do you think SummerSlam's a good event? SummerSlam '92?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's yeah. It would have been obviously the only way it would have been better is if we got better views. If we were watching it from a better view, then obviously at the time I think the excitement got to me so much I couldn't really enjoy it too much because I wanted to enjoy it. I was happy, but I was too happy, like too nerve wracked. I remember I kept on to hold my knees. My legs the legs were literally shaking non-stop. I had to hold them. With my hands because I was so excited. Yeah, it was. It was. It was a good day. The atmosphere was lovely. Yeah.
I think that's it. I mean, even if some of the matches weren't stellar, they weren't 5-star matches. The crowd was so into them, and it was a good atmosphere that it just made all the difference, didn't it? So, thank you, Lionel, for joining me today to discuss SummerSlam '92. The Juggernauts of Wrestling is brought to you by JingTVOnline.com, which is my comedy product. You can search for Jing TV Online on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter. There's a number of places you can find it. So check that out, please, and like and subscribe. And I did a bit of research on this by going to Wrestling Bios again. I just watched a little documentary they did on that, and that was quite interesting. Next time we'll be discussing Chris Benoit, which is a very heavy subject. So we're going to try and treat it sensitively. So we normally do funny graphics for our podcasts where we're superimposed on the wrestler's face, but we're not going to do that for Chris Benoit because it doesn't seem appropriate, really. And yeah, if you want to ask us any questions about Chris Benoit or you have any comments about previous topics we've discussed, then send us your thoughts to juggernautsofwrestling@gmail.com. And remember, if you disagree with us, don't get upset. Just give us your thoughts. And if appropriate, we'll read them out. Yep. So thank you, Lionel, for joining me. And thank you at home for watching the Juggernauts of Wrestling. The Juggernauts of Wrestling is sponsored by Jing TV. When I say sponsored, I mean the person who created Jing TV also is doing this podcast. That's Lee, not Lionel, because they look very similar. But anyway, go to Jing TV Online or search for Jing TV Online on TikTok, on Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, other places as well. I can't really remember right now. But yes, the message is Jing TV Online.